I used to be really into crime dramas. CSI, Monk, White Collar. So, The Mentalist, a show about a man solving a crime an episode while also hunting a serial killer, was practically a perfect fit.
Practically perfect in every way.
I would later come to realize that The Mentalist suffered from the same problems as J.J. Abrams' Mystery Box. If you didn't know, Abrams explained his storytelling philosophy during a TED Talk back in 2008, infamously calling it the Mystery Box. Abrams explains that he uses this box to tease the audience with a promise of revealing what is in the box. There is nothing wrong with this idea necessarily. Ideally, you want to keep your audience invested in your story. The thing is, Abrams loves the idea of what could be in the box rather than its contents. It's the big question, he says, so you're drawn to it. And then, of course, there's another question, and then it goes on and on and on. Which is a big problem, since your audience is kept engaged with the story because they want to know what's in the box.
What's in the box?
This would be like going on a roller coaster and later saying you only liked going up that first hill, and that the rest of it was a complete letdown because nothing was as exciting as the anticipation you felt going up that hill. Or in Abrams' case, liking the wait for a movie to start in a theater more than the movie. An audience needs to know the answers to the mystery of a story. Now granted, not every question needs to be answered. Not everything needs a Wikipedia-length explanation. But the main question of a story certainly does. Abrams' Mystery Box focuses so much on the anticipation, the suspense of finding out an answer for what's in the box, that it doesn't plan for what that answer will be. This is an especially big problem when the contents of the box is the main plot of the story. In the case of The Mentalist, its mystery box is the identity of Red John, the serial killer who murdered the family of the main character Patrick Jane. Red John is very rarely seen in person. He is technically seen at the end of the season 2 finale, but in disguise, so I don't know if you really want to count that. The rest of the time, he mostly communicates with typed notes, phone calls, and messengers who are his followers. Like in season 1, episode 11, Red John's Friends. At the end of the episode, Patrick answers a phone that belonged to a very recent Red John victim. All he hears on the other end is heavy breathing and what I can only describe as stereotypical maniacal laughter. Red John's lack of appearances did a lot to build up expectations of who, or even what, Red John would be. The writers of the show hyping him up like this made a lot of sense. He was what set The Mentalist apart from every other crime and cop show. And I suspect what got the show greenlit by studio executives in the first place. The first episode literally kicks things off with establishing just how scared these characters are of him. You see the face first, and you know, Patrick says. You know what's happened, and you feel dread. Then, and only then, do you see the body of the victim. Everything was going great for the show until the time came to reveal the contents of the mystery box. Red John's identity. The audience needed an answer. Something to justify their 3-season wait. So, the response to all this was the season 3 finale, Strawberries and Cream. The 2-part season finale was hyped up with TV promotions, promising that Red John and Patrick would meet face to face, no disguises, no tricks. The episodes build up this meeting between Patrick and Red John with an admittedly overcomplicated series of events. The too long didn't watch version of this is Alan, an employee at one of those loan companies that has insane interest rates in exchange for quick money, robs his workplace. Alan steals $50,000 and some discs containing lists of customers. The characters later figure out that whoever threatened and later killed Alan couldn't have been after the money. They had to have been after the customer lists. It turns out that one of the names on those lists is Red John's actual identity. Patrick eventually meets with a man in an open food court at a mall. This man claims to be Red John.
Some people call me Red John.
Patrick believes him. Patrick then kills this man with his own gun, and then sits down at a table with a cup of tea, supposedly having completed his revenge. This ending to the season obviously brought up more questions than it answered. What just happened? This guy was Red John? What was his real name? How was he able to do everything Red John is credited with doing? And then instead of giving answers to any of these questions, the first episode of the next season, spoiler alert, reveals that the man Patrick killed at the end of the last season was not Red John. He was a follower of Red John named Timothy Carter. The whole meeting was an elaborate plan to get Patrick convicted of murder and out of the way. This baffling story decision backfired. The audience had waited for 3 seasons and were promised the contents of the show's mystery box.
What's in the box?
And to have Red John's identity revealed to them, only to find out that the answer they were promised was a bait and switch for a shocking plot twist. As a reviewer for Entertainment Weekly, Jeff Jensen said, "The season 3 finale misdirect then really was pure strawberries and cream. Which is to say, The Mentalist was having its cake and eating it too. The maneuver allowed the producers to credibly scale back on Red John and focus on lighter case of the week stories. It made a lot of sense, and it was a miscalculation from which the show never recovered." I think the show's writers realized their mistake in backtracking on their promise of a reveal for Red John's identity. They had compromised their audience's trust that they would get a satisfying answer to the contents of the mystery box that drew them to the show in the first place. And boy, did the show suffer for it. Bruno Heller, the show's creator and executive producer, acknowledged this in a TV spot that aired after the actual Red John reveal episode. He says, "You can't keep tricking the audience or vamping on the audience with that kind of critical plot point. So, rather than play games anymore, it felt like the audience was ready for a definitive answer." Abrams's mystery box method of storytelling, particularly in this case, exposed a giant flaw with it. You have to give an answer to the contents of the box, especially if those contents are the main plot of your story. And if your answer is unsatisfactory, you will lose some of your audience and a good chunk of the trust of those who choose to stay. After the strawberries and cream letdown, the writers did their very best to get the audience's trust back. And it worked, sort of. Later in the show, the biggest clue to Red John's identity came in the season 5 episode, Red Sails in the Sunset. Lorelai is introduced as a character who very openly admits to being a friend of Red John, meaning she's a very faithful follower of Red John and will do pretty much anything he asks, no problem. She impulsively tells Patrick during an argument,
"I only wonder why the two of you didn't become lifelong friends the moment you shook hands."
Lorelai later suffers the consequences of her slip-up in this, adding to its credibility. This reveal was treated as a big deal. It was the first solid lead to Red John's real identity in the entire show up to that point. He was someone Patrick had met and shook hands with. And with all that build-up came the actual reveal episode early in season 6. The suspect list was down to 7, and there was very real tension of who it could be. Red John's identity was then revealed, and my reaction to it was confusion and disappointment. A reaction that a mystery show like this shouldn't have had. The man revealed to be Red John was not at all who the show had hinted he could be. This person was on the suspect list at least, but he didn't fit the criteria of the handshake Lorelai mentioned, or seemed to have the resources to pull off the crimes that Red John was credited with doing. Even as I rewatched the show for this video, I had somewhat of a suspicion that the Red John reveal was not really planned and had to have maybe been decided at the last possible minute. A suspicion that I thought was just mainly my disappointment in the reveal itself. But nope, I was right. And finding evidence of that was actually
Super easy, barely an inconvenience.
so much effort had been put into prolonging the mystery of Red John's identity, dangling that mystery box in front of the audience, that there wasn't really a plan of what to do when the contents did have to be revealed. Bruno Heller confirmed this in an interview article published in Entertainment Weekly the day the episode aired. Keep in mind that the last couple of years he refers to had to have been over the last maybe 2 seasons at best before the reveal. He said, "It just kind of emerged over the last couple years. There was always 3 or 4 possibilities. And it just happened, really. It seemed like the natural, correct choice." I think this is further seen in the fact that the character revealed to be Red John, and no, I won't tell you who it is for massive spoiler reasons, was only in 1 episode of season 2. Then suddenly comes up a lot more in later seasons, dragging out the Red John mystery, especially with no resolution in mind really, burned out the writers themselves. Chris Long, an executive producer and director, said, "We'd gone with this storyline for so long. I really felt like we'd played it out." So they had very little to go on, no plan of what to do, judging by the allegedly sudden decision of who Red John would be. The mystery box, as a storytelling method, isn't the worst for building suspense and keeping an audience engaged. For like the first half of the story.
They had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
This method really starts to fall apart when the contents of the box have to be revealed, when the story and the audience demand an answer, when those contents are the story, especially when those contents are so important that they have to be revealed for a satisfying resolution. What the mystery box fails to realize is that while the anticipation is great, the resolution to that feeling is just as important, and if done right can feel just as satisfying as the wait. Red John's identity was the Mentalist's mystery box. Finding out who he was the entire point of the show, and Patrick's sole motivation. That mystery couldn't be left up to speculation. That mystery was the story! The show had built up expectations of what its mystery box's contents could be, except for the strawberries and cream mishap. The unfortunate part was that there was no real plan of how to meet those expectations. So the story ultimately fell apart after 6 seasons. The writers and everybody else were more concerned with the mystery, the anticipation, than the actual reveal. Which is really too bad, because the reveal could have been so good.
Tiger, tiger.